Hello, everyone, and thanks for checking out the A.R.T's Roadmap for Recovery and Resilience for Theater. I'm Robert Duffley, the editor and assistant dramaturg at the A.R.T. And in this edition of the Roadmap, we're sharing some video conversations with members of the A.R.T. staff, showcasing how their work has changed during the pandemic. I'm joined today by A.R.T's Director of Production, Rick Noble, and Associate Production Manager Lindsay Child to learn more about what's happening in the Loeb and about how that work is being performed safely. Rick and Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if to start, you could say a little bit about what's happening in the Loeb right now.
So in the Loeb right now, like you said, we have CS50 on stage, which is, because it's a very theatrical class, it is like a small theater production for us. You know, we've got lighting, we've got sound. For anyone who's seen the stream of it, which I highly recommend, we have props. You know, we've made Muppet-esque numbers for classes. We've used doors. We've done all sorts of tricks.
What can you both tell us about the process of coming back into a theater that had been closed since March? What were some of the first steps in getting this project off the ground?
So the shutdown happened so quickly that we were in the middle of a transition from striking our production of Gloria. So part of it was just assessing where we were at. We had people go in, look around, and just figure out what was going to need to happen just before we could even get to a baseline.
And what was the actual process of teching the course like?
You know, I think both the load and tech were kind of interesting because we were all so eager to get back and working cross departmentally. So it definitely was slow going to start. Folks getting back into their kind of physical conditioning after being away for 6 months was definitely something that we stressed in the early days. There was also a lot of work. So I was primarily on site as our kind of on-site COVID protocols monitor. So rather than jump in and help a lot of the electrics hang and soft goods hang, I was sort of the lifeguard sitting in the back watching people's traffic patterns and enforcing hand washing and stuff.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit now about the specific safety protocols that are making this work possible. What can you tell us about the thinking around COVID safety measures in the space?
Sure. So big picture, first thing we had to start with is the building. Are we up to spec on building ventilation? Do we have MERV 13 filters in it? Or what is our airflow like? Because once you figure out how many CFMs of air are going through an area, you can figure out what the safe occupancy is. Lindsay, what else did you add? Because you've been the person who's really been on the protocols and keeping us all honest about hand washing and not getting too close together when we're working.
Yeah. That was a big one. And especially we've really focused on hand washing, mask wearing, and building ventilation, in addition to obviously regular testing at the advice of the Healthy Buildings team, so that those rare occasions, like when you're closing a ladder or when you're pushing something heavy, et cetera, and folks either do have to get within 6 feet of each other for a short period of time, or touch surfaces that are shared, then the risk mitigation layers are a little more stacked. The other big thing that we've sort of implemented is every day before we start work, or certainly during the load-in, during the actual, now that we're actually in the filming schedule, it's a little different. But during load-in, we started every day with a safety meeting where, whoever was the monitor reiterated what the safety protocols were, hand washing, et cetera, et cetera. And then we kind of went through our work list for the day to pre-think about any sort of what I call social distance pinch points that might occur throughout the day.
So I know two things that you've been thinking about specifically are tool handling protocol and also procedures for everyone to be washing their hands frequently without also being at the sink at the same time. Could you share what those protocols have shaped up to be?
Yeah, so for tool use, whenever possible, people should just be using, their own tools for a project, the assigned tools for a project. Like if you're, need a wrench for hanging lights, you grab a wrench and that is your wrench for the day. We leave it with your stuff, you disinfect at the end of the day, put it back in so that the disinfection plus just the time between use is ensured to kill any viruses on it. But then also, some tools like, we've only got 2 auto swagers, that tools like that, making sure that they were assigned to a person who's going to be around all day, who could take care of that and who could, be the person who, anytime that was needed for the day, used it. Also a note on that I think is worth mentioning. part of the return to work too has been just trying to make space for the fact that the entire world is upside down. People have childcare, elder care, everything else going on in their lives. That a lot of our calls, we built in more space than we would normally for just life around it. It's like, if somebody had to leave at 3 to go do something, like that was okay. Or, if somebody needed to step out because they had an appointment or needed to jump on a call, that was okay too. And that was part of the other reason we're building more time into the schedule for doing this wherever possible.
One thing I didn't ask about yet that I wonder if you could just share is what sorts of PPE are people on the team wearing when they're in the space, and is that variable at all?
Masks has been 100%. We have only been using gloves if it is a case where you would already be using gloves. Like some of our disinfectants, it's recommended that you wear gloves for that to avoid prolonged skin contact. So you would glove up for that. We are not gloving for daily tasks because it's actually better to have people washing their hands more frequently than thinking that gloves are going to be helpful.
You mentioned a little bit about testing, and I wonder if you could talk about the symptom attestation process that goes hand in hand with our testing strategy, and say a little bit about the contingency plans that you've had to put in place just in case somebody is sick with COVID or otherwise.
Yeah, so like you said, through Harvard, everyone's getting tested at least once a week. In the case of people working on a class, they get tested twice a week. But additionally, Harvard has the Crimson Clear program, which is a online symptom attestation form where people go through and report how they're feeling. And it's very important that staff answer that honestly. We've had staff who had minor symptoms be unable to come to calls because the follow-up with their health professional suggested they give it 24 hours. And that's good. I'm glad that people are doing that honestly. I'm glad that, people can take that time. We're kind of shifting a culture in theater right now of, you come to work no matter what to, if you're sick, stay home. We've got alternates on filming days for our key personnel to make sure that we can continue to film. And part of that, in tech days or prepping is just that things may take longer.
I wonder if we could talk really quickly too about traffic patterns, because anybody who's been backstage in the Loeb or really backstage at any theater knows that it can be kind of a tightly spaced labyrinth. So I know you've done some thinking about being very specific about who's moving where and when and coordinating the traffic of people around the space.
There are a couple of pinch points we identified just kind of walking around the Loeb. One of which is our primary sink and hand washing facilities are off of our green room. There's 2 bathrooms there and then a little bar sink that, so 3 of the 4 first floor sinks are in the same little cubby area. So in order to mitigate any potential traffic jams, we kind of instituted a one-way direction through our prop workroom so that everyone is entering the green room from the same side and then everyone is exiting back towards the Loeb from the same side. So it sort of created, at first it sort of created a jug handle, but then once we started implementing stage right off the Loeb and the props and the actual prop shop into that, it's kind of more like a rotary now.
It's funny because we talk a lot about choreography, obviously, in the theater. So it sounds like you both on the production end have created a very, very specific choreography for your teams and for the spaces that we're working with.
While it's not necessarily COVID-related safety, one of the really big things has also been stressing that folks haven't been doing this for a long time. It's been 6 months since anyone was working in a theater. So after all the COVID directly related safety things, part of the safety briefing was also just a reminder that we haven't been doing this for a while. Everyone should, give themselves a break. This is going to go slower, and that's okay. Now, one of the things we have discovered is that it's easy to forget to drink water when you're wearing a mask. So just make sure folks are taking regular breaks and drinking water, and that multiple people, or it may take longer to accomplish a task, and that's okay. That's part of what you have to build in to be as COVID safe as possible in these times and just give people that opportunity to ease back into working again. So Lindsay, you want to talk a little bit about culture of safety? Just the fact that, it's not, well, you have been the person who's watching this, you are by no means the only person.
Yeah. So part of what we've written into the protocol and part of what we stress kind of all the time, but especially in those safety meetings that we have, is that the concept that's while me or whomever is the monitor that day is the person solely looking at safety. Safety is everyone's job. And just because the COVID monitor might not see something, if you see something that you think is unsafe, either from a COVID perspective or just someone not wearing a hard hat, someone being dumb, someone like being unsafe at the top of a ladder, it is everyone on the call is empowered to call a hold and talk through it and figure out how to mitigate it and make it safer.
Just to reiterate, we're not back fully open, but it's really great to hear about the ways that your team has pivoted to still leverage these skills that we have as theater people and to share that work with folks around the world. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you all for tuning in.